how hard did you push it till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is Ashton and Chris, but not Chris. Chris motherfucking Hussey. Chris, how's it going, buddy? Or Hussey, how's it going? I never call you Chris.
Yeah, Hussey. Yeah, it's weird. For my whole life, I've always been called Chris, and then only since 2020 and meeting a whole bunch of golfers and one of them being Big Chris, I'm not quite big, but decided to just go with Hussey, so that's a lot easier. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm having a day and afternoon. This is not nearly as kind of morbid as it sounds, but I am sort of having an afternoon of like thinking about my mortality a little bit.
Okay.
In the sense of really just Instagram, which is a weird way to say this, but before you jumped on, I was scrolling and I realized that, I'm not old. I'm 31 years old, but I've realized that like I feel like pop culture has already passed me by in the sense of this was a Major League Baseball post and they were talking about some guy named, do you know Peso Pluma? Does that name mean anything to you? Right. Okay. Well, that makes me feel better.
No.
I know I'm probably going to get roasted for this, but he seems to be a musical artist, and on Instagram he has 10.1 million followers. It's like a very big deal. I've never heard that name until I was scrolling. That was my first thought. And the second thing is I saw that Travis Scott is coming out with he came with a new video and stuff, and this is the dad in me. It's like, you remember the Astroworld stuff a couple years ago where like basically people died at his show and he like didn't help them and didn't stop the show, and just kind of thinking about how Travis Scott can continue to be a cultural icon despite the fact that he has the blood of his fans on his show. So a very weird way to start this show, but that's what I was thinking about before you jumped on. So I'm in a good mood, but I was like, who the hell is Peso Pluma? I'm super old at 31. And then wondering how Travis Scott can, continue to just do this without any, I don't know, like just kind of potentially being a bad guy, allegedly.
No ramifications, whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've been thinking about mortality too. Yesterday and the day before, I watched Avatar: Way of Water, and there's some morality questions in there too. And then last night, my wife Osa put on Titanic, and it was just like there's a lot of like talk about mortality and like trying to figure out your life and trying to really enjoy every minute and just sometimes you don't have to plan your whole life out, just kind of live it. So anyways, mortality. Okay. Cheers.
But actually this is a perfect segue, unplanned. The two things we're going to talk about in this podcast are one, you and I went down together to the U.S. Women's Open. We'll discuss that. Mm-hmm. And then also the other component too about, being less, not caring about cost, but being a little bit more like, we love Metro for $66. It's a lot of what we do and a lot of what we talk about, but recently played around together at the Spanish Bay. I said the Spanish Bay. It's just
Spanish
the links
Bay. At Spanish Bay.
There you go. The links at Spanish Bay. And even though around that we'll not kind of preview our thoughts and feelings about it yet. Trying to do some of those rounds where it's like, man, like might feel it on the pricey end, but like let's start to knock some of these ones off, right? We've done that a couple times together this year, and we'll continue to do so. But let's start with the U.S. Women's Open. We could take this any direction we want, but it was just me and Hussey. We drove down on Saturday and drove back on Saturday. But Hussey, what do you want to talk about? What stuck out to you? Golf course, players, weather. It doesn't matter. Just what was your thoughts about kind of going down there?
I mean, there's a few things. One, infrastructure. Like I had never been to Pebble Beach for the any of the events. The pro-am that they do down there every year. Never been down there for that. Very easy for a spectator, for someone to come along and, you park your car at Carmel Middle School and just take a bus and it's, 15 minutes and you're there and you just walk right in and it's super easy. And, that might be, I understand why they don't go to a lot of golf courses. There's probably some great golf courses that they just cannot play major tournaments at because the infrastructure isn't there. But now I understand. Like now, that's an actual example of like what good infrastructure is in order to accommodate a large amount of people. And I'd be curious to see. Maybe we should have looked this up, but like what the attendance was for the U.S. Women's Open compared to what the Pebble Beach Pro-Am is, and then what the U.S. Open, the men's U.S. Open is, and just for comparison's sake. But yeah, it was great. It was super easy, and yeah, I really enjoyed just getting in and out of there. Leaving was a little tough, but that's all right. Not a big deal. It's always tough when you leave, sporting events or concerts or things like that. But how about we talk about the golf or the course?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what in no way, shape, or form to take away from the play, which we'll talk about. I think what stood out to me, well, first of all, going into the day, I had a tremendous excitement of finally getting to see Pebble Beach. I think it's a place that I've seen through TV. Like I actually don't feel like, when you listen to the Fried Egg and stuff, they'll say, like if someone says the 12th hole, like it's not a place like Augusta where like I just kind of knew the 12th hole directly, but a place that I was very intimate with. I kind of knew that 6, 7, 8 stretch sort of something that was familiar to me. And funnily enough, you talk about architecture or infrastructure. The 2 times I've been down there was, for whatever reason, I think you were with us one of those times, maybe both. Nick came up the week of the Super Bowl twice, which is the week after the AT&T tournament twice. And both times we go to have brunch before we play Poppy Hills. And they're just ripping apart the grandstand, so you can't even really see 18. So I've seen them dismantling the infrastructure on 18, and I've kind of seen, down that hole a little bit. But that's the extent of what I've seen, except for like a couple holes you might see, I think number like 7 or no, 17, like hole 15, the one kind of a boring hole. So I wasn't very familiar with it. And one day we'll definitely play there. And, one of the feelings that I've had for some of those, Hussey, you've talked a lot about this. You actually called in to Shock and Start about this, is talking about managing expectations when you go to play one of these premier tracks, right? And Pebble Beach is one of those places where, like, realistically, probably more than any other course we're ever going to play, you're only going to play it once. It's a public course. You're going to play it once because when you bake in all those fees, you're probably spending like 2 G's to play there, right? And you're kind of like, God, like, I've never seen this place. And I found it really fun and engaging and refreshing and exciting to be able to just walk the course with you, right? And like stop and talk about it so that when we inevitably play there, it's not like, oh my God, I've never been near 7 before. It's going to feel amazing to be on that tee box and hit the shot. But there was just something really nice to be like around the place and to be able to kind of walk around there. Again, I'm not trying to make this about us, but that was my first thought, that it's nice to kind of have that experience. And then I think secondarily, something I know you can tack on as well that we discussed in real time. But Pebble Beach, I think one of the issues that this is a tired take from No Laying Up and Fried Egg, but a lot of how TV shows Pebble Beach, there are cliffs. There are certain shots like on 7 or 6 where like you can't help but notice that it's way up a cliff. But I think what TV has done is really kind of flatten Pebble Beach. And then you get out there and like, I think that when we just walked the course at a very, very, very leisurely pace, stopping to talk, stopping to watch shots, my watch, like I was basically at, 1,000 move calories, which is like a whole day of like pretty strenuous movement just by walking the course, not playing. Again, like moving very slowly, stopping, having a beer, and just being out there. Like, it's just, as Andy Johnson has said, it's amazing that place exists. The scale and scope of the property is so much more extensive than I could have ever imagined. And so we'll get to the golf, but starting on the venue, Pebble Beach itself just blew me away. Some holes that we discussed, like, probably aren't the best. Definitely I know what Andy's talking about, some of those green complexes seeming pretty small. But man, when you talk about like getting to, again, we started to do it. We're like, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, you start to just count off these holes and it's like, okay, wow. So like most of the holes are pretty memorable, in a place that, as a lot, like Andy said, could really use a restoration. But, you know, the fact that it's that magnificent as is pretty unbelievable. So the course really, really impressed me. So I know you talked about kind of the scale feeling similar to you, but did you have kind of similar feelings there about the actual venue itself?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, you know, the course on TV many a time, and you know, like everyone has said, as you mentioned, TV flattens everything. And what was the first thing that I noticed as soon as you're kind of out on 9 and 10, if you turn around and kind of look backwards, back towards the clubhouse when you're on 10, you really start to see the tilt of the property as it is coming down from the hill. On TV, you don't really get to see how severe that is. And so, you know, I've heard this about Augusta, that it's even more hilly than it looks on TV. And there's all these shots you have to hit below your feet, above your feet, whatnot, downhill, uphill. I felt like Pebble Beach had those elements that I had never known before, never seen before, never even noticed on TV. You know, hole number 9, for example, I had no idea there was this gigantic downhill like speed slot. I mean, the entire fairway just drops like, you know, 50 feet maybe. And watching Yuka Sasso hit her drive, an amazing drive, it just took off down this hill and it just didn't stop. And at a certain point, I was like, that ball's just going to keep rolling into the cliffs onto the beach, you know? And you know, we could talk about how maybe not firm, you know, things don't really roll out as much out there, and that'll probably talk about Spanish Bay too. But yeah, I think the scale, the tilt, it's much more undulating than it seems. And then, you know, I think we have to talk about 17. That green, my whole life I thought was just kind of this flat, boring, yeah, it's like butterfly shaped or however you want to call it. But no, you get there and like there's a gigantic ridge in the middle. And, you know, when Gary Woodland won his U.S. Open, he had to chip it on the 4th round. And until you get there, you don't actually understand why you have to do that. You know, it's just canted away from you, back to front. There's no way to get a ball close to a back left pin if you're back right. And TV, to me, just didn't really explain that too well, show it too well. And sitting there on the grandstand, we sat there for, an hour maybe, just seeing a bunch of golfers go through there. And, I really, really like that hole now. It's strange how being there in person completely changes your mind about a golf hole. And I think that's a great closing stretch, 16, 17, and 18 personally.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we did it right. So like I said, so basically we did is we sort of methodically walked 1 through 18, took a little bit of a break, and then went and sat at 17. And to your point, I think exactly like you said, there is something wonderful. And that's kind of the push-pull of, you know, of going to a golf tournament, because this is not meant to be a flex, but, you know, I've been to the Masters twice, and the first time I went, it was the year Adam Scott won. And so even though I knew in my head it wasn't smart, we followed Adam Scott. So we're following the leaders in the rain. And like, it was amazing to kind of be like, I was standing when Adam Scott made the putt on 10 in the playoff. I was standing probably like 150 yards out in the fairway. And to be clear, it was so dark that you could see him finally raise his hands up via the flash bulbs. Like, that's how dark it was. But I did that because historically, you know, other than Tiger, Adam Scott is my favorite, you know, golfer. I know you're in the same boat there. So I did that. But the real magic of when, I mean, of course, Tiger won, but when I went in 2019, we knew it was going to be insane. So we took off and sat at 16. And, you know, you've seen that hole on TV a lot. But there's something about sitting there all day and seeing every single group where, like, when balls would land, by the time we got to the 5th or 6th group, I could tell you exactly where that one ball was going to go, you know? So the funny thing is when Tiger finally hit it and when his ball landed on that green, I felt like I was the first person. I probably wasn't, but I stood up and I was like that's a hole in one. I'm like, I had watched all these shots all day, and then Tiger hits it. Of course, it was this far, and that's probably the birdie that propelled him to win. He kind of just coasted on 17 and 18. But there is something that's so fun about being able to sit, especially on a par 3, and be able to really kind of become intimate with that specific hole. Because what we experienced too is the pin was, because it's like a horizontal hourglass going this way. The pin was kind of not front right, but it was on the front right part towards the middle. But it was really helpful because then when I was at home on Sunday watching and that pin was back left, I knew it's like, to get it close to that, it has to land a pace maybe onto that green, and you kind of looking at the scorecard and you're like, you got to fly at like 178. If it's 176, it's going in the front bunker. If it's 180, it's going to shoot over the back. And we only knew that because we sat there and watched that all day. It gave me an entirely new appreciation of that shot. And a good segue to the golf is, I think one of the things that was really enjoyable for me was that's a good example of the women's game being inherently more interesting than the men, right? Because as you and I know, to that, if we're saying, hey, it's 178 and it's got to be 178, if you're Scotty Scheffler and can hit a 56-degree wedge from 178, like, okay, way up in the air, it sort of neutralizes what can happen. Where if you're hitting 7-iron or something like that, it's just a lot different, right? It's a very different test, a lot more of a kind of skill and precision. And I think watching even though they made some setup adjustments that were a bit confusing about Pebble Beach as far as mow lines and stuff, it was really fun to be able to watch, women with 6-irons in their hands attacking pins that, it just there's a lot less room for error than when you've got flip wedge, or even if not flip wedge. The difference between 6-iron and 9-iron is a ton. And that's where seeing the women's game was fundamentally different,
Yeah, especially with how tiny those greens were. I mean, like, the ability to run it up is almost non-existent with some of those greens. Like 4, for example. I mean, you can't hit anything but an iron off that tee. Like, you have really no shot. Now, maybe, I think in the men's game, some of them do go for it, but, they probably play it a little further back too. But yeah, it was honestly an eye-opening experience for me to go to Pebble Beach. And, do you have any favorite holes off the top of your head that you're really excited to go back and actually play this time?
I think that the easy answer is 6. I mean, I can't imagine the feeling of hitting that tee shot, trying to push it up to the right, and then being down there and having no clue where. I mean, I think that's so much of the fun of if we've things we've talked about, like Bannon Trails, the Alps hole, right? You hit it kind of over the stick and you're kind of walking quickly because you have so much anticipation, like where'd it go? Where'd it land? What happened? I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that like that hole is one where it's like, you wish there was a camera up there to be like, but where'd it go? Like where did it land up here? You'll kind of never know, right? So I think that 6, I think 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9 are like the ones that are just like, holy cow. But I think there's some, the underrated like ones that set me more. I think 2 seems like a really good hole. I think it's like kind of like a par 5 where like, again, good architecture to kind of be able to see it intimately where, the fairway tilts like this and there's bunkers over here. And it's like, if you push up the right, it's going to just kind of trickle. There's no real lip on those bunkers. It's just going to kind of trundle in. And then you're not going to go it for. Another good example of like 2, you have to hit it in between that chute of trees. I had no idea there was a gigantic like trough bunker down there. Like we're walking by and I was like,
totally.
I didn't know that was there. Like that looks not fun. It's like 80 yards out, super high lip, had no clue that was there. So I think 6, 7, 8, 9 is sort of like obviously, but I think 2 kind of set out to me as interesting. And then I know the one that kind of you opened my eyes about is, I think 16, right? The downhill one. That's kind of one that I had not really thought about or noticed. That's kind of one you really illuminated for me. That's kind of 5 holes or 6 holes. But that's the problem with Pebble, right? It's like great courses like this, it's like narrow it down. But yeah, I mean, I think the 6, 7, 8, 9 stretches, it's going to be like, it's kind of hard to mention. You're thinking like, yeah, this is why I paid $2,000 like for that.
Yeah.
that experience. But man, I can't wait. Like I'm already anticipating it, and I have no clue when we're gonna do it. You know.
I mean, I think 8's going to be wild because, you know, as a spectator, you can't get close to that cliff at all. So you you have no idea what it actually looks like. You don't know what it looks like from where I remember Amari Avery was kind of on the right side. Like, I want to be over there and actually able to see the cliff, see the beach below you, and then see the green across the way. Yeah. But from where we were, our vantage point, you know, it builds anticipation. There's a reason why people are going to spend the money to go there, because you actually get to see the views from, you know, the actual viewpoint of the players. But I think 3 is going to be my choice for that.
Yeah,
that's the hole I'm like most excited to play, just because of how. Well, it's like almost like a 90-degree turn, you know, left, dogleg left. Let's say 75-degree. You know, right to left fairway, banking, downhill, but then the green is like kind of tucked on the right into this hill. Yeah. And like if there's we were talking about the pin was on the right, it's like you can't go over that. Like you have to hit a crazy cut off of this draw lie. Yeah. Sorry, as a righty, that's
no, it's okay.
You got to hit it.
You got to hit righty bias.
A left to right shot off a right to left lie. Yeah, that's the third hole, and like I think that's an amazing that's like a nice. One's you kind of snoozy, kind of normal, nice handshake. 2's like, let's go, come on. Try and make an eagle. Yeah. And then 3 is like, okay, now you have to actually like hit some real like shots. So I really like 3. And it's what gets you out to the ocean too. So yeah.
And to be fair about this, there's also some holes that I wasn't enthused about and like really didn't show off in person either. Like some holes that are very much feel like connector holes. And the other thing, which
15.
is
15's terrible.
It's just like a slightly down. I mean, I guess the tee shot's cool because there's some sort of like quote unquote like forced carry, but not really. I mean, not really. I mean, really that stretch of what's the par 5 I hate so much? The dog leg to the right.
14. Yeah, you don't like 14. Uphill.
Yeah, and then 15 is the par 3, right?
No, 15's that weird connector hole in the back that you always see from what you saw from the bus.
14 stinks, 15 stinks, and then what's the par 3 you saw, Nate?
12. That's after the blind 11 uphill. Yeah, the short par 4.
Yeah, so that's the hard part. Is 10 is cool, 11 is cool, 12 stinks, 13 is awesome. And then 14 and 15 stink. Cool. And then 16, 17, 18 is awesome. So it's a really weird stretch of holes. That was another one. 13 is so cool. Similar idea. I just punched my mic. Everything's tilted like this. Again, everything trundles into the bunker, no lip. It's like, God, this is good architecture. But there's some of those holes that are just so clearly feel like, well, you got to get over there, so here's just like a hole to get you out there, you know, which is kind of tough when you're spending $2,000. Because that's what we say with PASA, right? The beauty of PASA is, like, Nate, you know, I don't love 17, but okay, like, it's not terrible, right? And it's also not $2,000 to play Pasa Tiempo, so I don't know. Did you have any holes that really grinded your gears?
15. It's just boring. I mean, maybe you need an easy hole before you get to 16, 17, 18. You just need something like, I'm thinking if you're in a tournament, if I'm in the U.S. Open, round 4, and, you know, I've got the lead, I kind of want 15 there. You know, you just maybe hit iron off the tee and run it up because I think you can. I can't recall if there's anything in front of the green.
No, there's not.
And just get away with a par. Maybe try and make birdie, and then you go into 16, 17, 18. Pray that you just get on the right part of the hole. So but that's my daydream for today. Thinking I was in the Open.
Hey, I don't know. Do you want to, as a little segue, do you want to, I was going to bring it up earlier, but I got talking about mortality. You've been playing some good golf, dog. You shot your best ever yesterday. 72 at Boundary Oak, 3.0 handicap, lowest ever. You've been playing some good golf, my man.
Thank you. It's a 3.2 because the PCC was a -1, which meant the course played easier on average. Probably because I shot 72 and then it like skewed the whole.
I was saying you're the needle.
I probably
you're the needle.
I probably screwed it all up. I've been playing really well. Thanks. I think it's swinging my swing and not really thinking about changing much. It's about putting with feel and putting athletically as opposed to being so fixated on line and all that, and that's changed everything for me. And I don't know, it all changed after I watched Tiger's 2006 round at Royal Liverpool for some reason. I just felt like he made it so simple. Just hit it to the middle of the fairway, hit it to the middle of the green, and 2-putt. Like, after that, I was like, oh, I could just hit 4-iron like off a bunch of tees. Like, that's not a problem. But yeah, the 72 yesterday, I was on 15, 1 under. Sorry, can I go into a little dramatic little reading?
Please. I brought this up.
Okay. Yeah.
I should have started with this,
15,
but for some reason I got thinking about Los Pablos or whatever the fuck. I meant to start with this and got down a rabbit hole about death. So bring us back to life.
No, Boundary Oak, it's Walnut Creek. It's the municipal course. It's usually in pretty good shape. The greens this year haven't been that great. Anyways, it's tough. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, very tough closing stretch of holes. I was on the 15th tee, 1 under, and there's a little bit of water left, and you cannot hit it left, and I hit it left into the water. So I made double on that hole, and so I was +1 on 16 tee, and I was like, in match play, we love match play so much because you're like, I gotta hit this number, I just gotta beat that person. I need to win this hole. That's all that matters, is winning this hole. For me being out there, I was like, on the 16th tee, I was like, I'm going to break par today, so I need to make 2 birdies. I need to be -2 over the last 3 holes. And having that kind of goal in my mind really freed me up in some way. I was just like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to hit, and we'll see what happens. And, I had a birdie putt on 16, and I missed it by, a foot or two. Made par. 17, I was playing with my cousin, and so I said, if I make a hole in one, we gotta make a bet. And he was like, all right, if you make a hole in one, I'll streak. And I said, okay, we'll shake on it. So if he made a hole in one, I'd streak. Anyways, none of us made a hole in one. But I was just short of the green and had a little 52 wedge, just a little bump and run, and I hit the cup and it spun out, it lipped out. I was like, oh my God. So I was like, holy shit, okay, made par. Now I have to eagle the last hole, which is a par 5, which is very difficult. It's honestly, it's like a 90-degree turn, left up a hill, blind shot to the green. And I've never really been in the fairway there because I always think I can go over the bunkers, and I never can. So I was like, just aim right at the bunkers. And so I hit it, middle of the fairway, great. I get up there, I'm 244 to the front with a little tailwind, pins in the back, but it's blind. And so I know that I just have to aim over the left side, or the right side of the left trees, 3-wood, and I just hammer it. And it's the exact shot I was picturing in my mind. And I see it bounce in the air, and I know it's on the green. The question is where. And it's blind, so you cannot see it until you actually get up on top. Eventually get up on top, and I'm 12 feet from the hole. And I'm like, holy shit. 12 feet. And so my cousin knows what's going on. There's 2 random dudes that I'm playing with. And I've been in this situation before where I have kind of have a chance to go under par like I did at Soul Park. And I kind of kept it to myself for the most part, besides telling you and, one other person. But this time I was like, I'm going to acknowledge it. because I want to try something different. I'm going to acknowledge it. So I acknowledged it, and I said, okay, I have an eagle putt to break par for the first time in my life. And I told the dude that I was playing with, hey, man, just so you know, this is for my first time to break par. Just an eagle putt here. And he goes, I would never have said that out loud. And I was like, oh, fuck. Anyways, I felt good. I felt great. I got up there. And I said, it's 2 cups to the right. It's going to break left, uphill. Just give it a go, And I miss it by like 3 inches. Put it in. Even par. I mean, I can't complain. So, yeah, thank you for letting me tell that story, Ashton. I was very happy. I got a michelada afterwards and an El Burrito, a very big burrito. And, yeah. So now I need to break par. So that's my goal between now and the end of the year. Yeah. Thanks.
It's funny, we were driving back from Tahoe, and I saw your text, and I told Liz, and I said I just like that does not surprise me at all. And I think you're knocking on the door. It's just been really, really fun to watch you play good golf. And it's close, but I'm stoked for you. And also too, I mean, like you were saying, I totally understand the superstition, but it's funny because the one time that I broke par, I didn't know how to handle it either because it was weird. I was 1 under on the front 9, and it was my first time ever breaking par for 9 holes. And Nick had been playing golf for like 2 months, so he didn't really know the decorum or, really didn't kind of know what you should or shouldn't do. And so I said, Nick, here's the deal. You're not supposed to talk about this, but like I'm 1 under par. I've never done this before, but I have a question as my friend. Do I keep this golf ball as a keepsake? Or do I keep playing with it, and do I go fucking break par? And Nick, he looked at me and he was like, you fucking keep playing that golf ball. And sure enough, like, I was 2 under on 18. I birdied 17 to go 2 under. And then I made bogey on the last hole. I literally, the first putt was the yippiest putt of my life. Like, I had 20 feet up the hill, and I probably got it 8 feet to the hole. Like, it was all of a sudden it like hit me what was going on, and I was like, oh my God. And then I tapped it and it goes so, and I was like, I think I shot 1 under 69, but like let me go and double check,
That's
so
amazing.
I don't know. I acknowledged it and it worked out. So I don't know. I think sometimes whatever's best for you around the comfort fact of like if the hush is gonna bother you, then I don't know. Speak like in baseball. There's the whole like you don't say someone has a perfect game. I don't think that has any factor if someone actually throws a perfect game. So I kind of like that you spoke it into existence, and it sounds like the putt you hit was the putt you wanted to hit, and you saying it had nothing to do with anything. So kudos to you for just leaning into it.
Thanks. I think the next time I'm in that situation, next time you're in that situation, maybe we'll try something different, not acknowledge it, maybe just be stern like Tiger and not say a word, not talk to anyone. But I think, kind of our personalities aren't like that. It's like you're locked in, but you're locked in when you need to be as opposed to always just, horse blinders on or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, and this is maybe an elitist thing to say, but we are both like, in the threes is in the handicap perspective. The thing that I found is I know I've done it before, but we've both been playing some good golf, and like for example, when I was at a couple months ago, I had just a hell of a weekend where I was even par standing on 15T at Lake Merced, and I finished like 2 or 3 over. And the first question when I told that story to like multiple people was like, oh, like were you aware of it, and like did you like freak out? And it's like, no, like quite the opposite. Like I've done that before. I know I'm a good player. Trust the process. And I didn't do it, but it wasn't because the moment was too big. I mean, literally the next day I was 1 over from the tips, staying on 18T with Jack. And it's like, no, I was here yesterday. Like nothing is fundamentally different, right? And just the variation of golf, right? It's not uncommon. It could be a fifth. I mean, literally like I played golf with you last week during the week, and like you kind of looked like the Walking Dead at Monarch Bay, right? You're just hitting these blocks, and you didn't have a lot of energy, and then the next round you play. I mean, the round with the same thing I broke par with Nick. The week before I had shot 87 and had no clue what was going on, and then literally the next week 18 shots different, because that's golf. That's just golf, right? And so in the next moment, it's like, rather than it's par, it's like, hey man, like I've been with you at Foxtail when you shot one or two over. I was the group behind you and you were 4 under at Soul Park on the front nine. It's more around just trusting, like, you've been knocking around the door, and then it's just going to be a moment where you just got to walk through it. But it's not really like you've never been there. I mean, you've been 4 under on the front, which I bet a lot of people who've broken par once, they've never been 4 under on 9 holes. So it's like, you've been right there. You just got to be like, I got this, and walk through. At some point you're going to walk through the door. It's not actually about breaking par, even though I know it is a big bugaboo, and I understand the cachet of that, but you've been so near it that, like, hopefully you can keep your heart rate down as you kind of eventually get near it again.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, and as long as we just keep doing what we do, we're gonna get there. And the funny thing was, is I went to the gym the day before and I worked out, so I showed up on Sunday morning. It's like 8:30 tee time. I worked on shoulders,
hell yeah,
too, so I was sore as hell. And I think that kind of helped me, because it forced me to just swing, not try and overpower it. Because I think, like you mentioned at Monarch Bay, earlier that week, I was trying to kill the ball. Like, I really wanted to kill the ball and hit it far. But when I was, at Boundary Oak, yesterday, it was like, just swing smooth, tempo town, just have a good time. And so the first hole, I super smooth shot, right down in the middle of the fairway, hit an approach wedge, left myself 6 feet downhill and made the putt. And guess what?
Yeah.
The ball I was playing for that first hole was the Union Green pin drop. I kid you not.
Hell yeah. Wow.
I kid you not.
Ad.
Well, maybe you should segue.
Yeah.
Into I don't know. This is my first time doing this. I don't run this pod. Come on. I'm gonna drink some Chardonnay and let you do something.
Well, as he cuts himself off, this pod is sponsored by Union Green. Again, we just want to give a big shout out to them for allowing us to do what we do. Union Green's all about, as we've kind of talked about, really kind of removing barriers, low cost golf balls, the pen drop, also the T-Bird, really kind of comfortable gear. We've really been working on them. You guys have probably seen on social. We've been doing some public golf spotlights with them, which, again, there couldn't be a better brand. Where, like, part of what they asked us to do was to, take pictures and do write-ups that we could post on, to really help get the word out. I did one on Presidio. Jack did one on Moffitt. Big Chris did one on Gearhart. So just really, love what they're about, and really kind of supporting all things that we do. And as a reminder, use code Municipals20. The golf balls go from being cheap to even cheaper. And again, lots of great gear for you to wear. But Chris, beautiful. You're not a professional. I mean, I think you might have the most guest appearances of anybody, but pretty damn close. But shout out to Union Green. Thank them for their support. We appreciate their support, and please use Municipals20 for anything you might need from their store. But Chris, speaking of, I guess, to kind of bring all this around, you playing good golf, Pebble Beach and all this stuff. Before we get out of here, again, you and I played a round at the links at Spanish Bay with our friend Paul and our friend Brian. You and I decided to tip it out and play a match. I think at the time you got 1 stroke, and I believe you beat me 4-3. You played great golf that day. I think you had a couple car crashes, which are they your fault or the golf course's fault? We'll kind of discuss that here. But what were kind of your high-level thoughts on the links at Spanish Bay?
I think, honestly, it's a beautiful, beautiful site. The dunes there, just gorgeous. It used to be, an old sand mining operation, I think. An old sand mine. Super white sand. You pay the money for that view and just being able to be right by the water. But then the course is also in really good condition. My initial thoughts was I was super excited to be out there. Heard it was links golf. And it just doesn't really follow through on that. I think being out there, everything is super lush and super green. Balls were not rolling. Very narrow, very, very narrow, very penal. To me, and granted, I've never played actual links golf over in the British Isles. Um, but, usually their courses are pretty wide. From my understanding, I could be completely wrong. And it just, yeah, I mean, the views were great. The company is great. It's just, there were some really great holes that we can talk about, but there was just a lot of like forced carries and just, yeah, really like there's no place to miss in certain spots. And I guess it's a really good test of golf if you're a really good golfer. Like maybe if Ashton, you and I played not from the tips and maybe played one ups, maybe it would have been a much more enjoyable round. Maybe we would have had different, kind of opinions on the golf course. But personally, it just didn't feel like links golf or what I thought links golf was supposed to be. Um, yeah, I mean, what were your kind of initial thoughts?
Uh, I was pretty let down, honestly. Um, what stood out to me as I thought about this more is, and I'm not comparing the two golf courses, but I think the sentiment is the same. I remember if you watch the no laying up video and they go play the ocean course, Tron walks off the course and he's all beaten up and he says, "That's a golf course where I'd like to go watch people hit the shots. I'd like to walk with a group and have a beer in my hand and watch them hit the shots, but I don't need to hit the shots myself." And I think that's very similar to how I feel about the links at Spanish Bay. The day before, we had been lucky enough, our friends Paul and Elizabeth, their parents have a house down there, and we all kind of got some wine, put it in a plastic cup, and just kind of like, because they live within the kind of the Pebble Beach kind of specific area, and we walked kind of down by that area, kind of down near Cyprus, and just being around that area is so magical. And I think that that's some of the stuff that the links at Spanish Bay do right. But I think the issue is, like, for the love of God, there's nothing links about that place. Like, there is sand and there is ocean, but, like, first of all, it's misnamed, which drives me insane. I think that they don't call it that. But I think the thing that I get really confused about is, yes, the name, but it's a golf course to me that has just, it doesn't understand its identity. Because when we were talking about it afterwards, you texted me, you were like, maybe it's because we're not good enough, right? Or maybe it's because, and maybe you're right. But my issue is, if, like, the Links at Spanish Bay is a resort golf course. It's one of the 3 courses at Pebble Beach where people are, we're lucky enough where we could drive down for the weekend, find a reasonably priced hotel. We didn't blow it out that weekend. And, Paul's a Dukes Club member. And so we didn't even we paid about half of what we should have paid for the golf, right? And so for us, it's about as affordable as it's possible to do that. But if you're somebody who plays golf like 5 times a year and you're super stoked about getting down there and the Links at Spanish Bay is the one course that you're going to play, I mean, you're just not going to have any fun. And I think that, like, for a lot of times, I know resort courses aren't required to have fun, but that's why I think we love Bandon so much. Because, no, I mean, you're being a little disingenuous. You've never been to the British Isles, but what links golf is supposed to be. We've played a bunch of golf at Bandon Dunes. Like, you understand that it's about width and angles and, like Old Mac, right? The massive green complexes. And everything about that fell short at the Links at Spanish Bay. To your point, I mean, to be very complimentary, things we'll get into, some extremely wonderful par 3s. Like, some memorable par 3s. Like, 16 is one of the golf holes I'm going to remember most playing this year, and we've played a lot of good golf courses this year. But then, I don't know. I think, but that's the hard part for me, is when a course is quite literally misnamed, it's not the Links, and then it's a resort golf course, which is so penal and so challenging. And again, like, it's hard because we've talked about it's really hard to divorce how you play from how you feel. And, like, I had some really good holes, but overall I did not play well on this day. I didn't hit the ball great. But I was just thinking, like, I am a 3 handicap who had a iffy ball striking day and I shot in the mid 80s, right? It's like, dude, if you're just coming out here trying to have some fun and this is the one where you can play with rental clubs, you're going to shoot, if you're actually, most people don't, but if you're going to like post the number on the score, you're going to shoot like 135, man. And so it's more of like, I tell people, go walk around that area, go have we had lunch at the clubhouse and kind of got that view. But man, you don't need to go play that course. I just, it's, and it's also too, we've played, this is a separate podcast I'm going to do with Jack and Big soon. We played the Ridge. I think I'm just Robert Trent Jones'd out, man. It's just like Target Golf and, again, like the links at Bodega Harbor. Oh my God. I actually kind of like that golf course, but like, just stop calling, it's just a lie. And so I think that's the big thing for me is just the frustration of, it's just too hard, especially when you factor in the fact that it's supposed to be a resort golf course, people having a good time. I just don't understand why it needs to be that hard. And as you said, some things that are pretty easy where it's like, what are we doing having like tight island fairway, force carry, tight island fairway, green on a par 4? Just connect the fairways. It just feels like every opportunity that they had to turn it up or kind of like dig it to you, it's like, I feel like golf courses should go out of their way to like make it a little gentler or a little more understanding. Like, find ways to penalize us in other ways, but like, don't make it where it's like, if the wind's blowing 25 in your face and you kind of mishit it, it might actually not get over the force carry on the way to the green on a par 4. That is not the kind of golf that I love. So I think it's a stylistic thing. It just kind of like hit me the wrong way. But again, a great walk, really beautiful, some really great holes, an elite logo. I think it's a really great logo, but it's just, it's like, what is it? The emperor no clothes, or the saying. It's just like, it's just not what it's, I keep punching the mic. It's not, it's not what it's,
someone's aggressive.
It's not what it's not what it says that it is. And I find that very frustrating. Does that make sense?
I think, it makes 100% sense. Maybe it's the Parkland course at Spanish Bay or something along those lines. It's definitely not a links course. I did a bit of digging. I was just curious about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently when they first, when they planted this course, it was all fescue, which would have changed everything. And I don't know, I can't give, this is from Golf Club Atlas, and it's pretty old, so I don't know if it's true, but apparently there was this stigma that if you pay $200 greens fee as a Pebble Beach Resorts guest, you want to see green golf courses. You want to see green everywhere. So there was a decision to take out the fescue and replace it with, green grass. I assume it's bent or something along those lines. It's a shame. Apparently Tom Watson and Sandy Tatum were both against ripping out the fescue, but hey, if it brings in the clientele, it brings in the clientele, and there's not going to be repeat customers for us, unfortunately. But I think we didn't actually get crazy wind either. I mean, I really, I mean, the shots that were being asked to hit from, I think of 17 always is island green or island fairway to island green, surrounded by dunes, which I don't know if you can technically play out of. I think they're all ESA, environmentally sensitive areas. There's a lot of those around, which is totally fine. I'm sure there's some reason to it with, the old sand mining issues, but if they connected them, like you said, be a lot easier. But setting on that 17th tee, hitting into, a headwind, it was just really hard having to hit, a low punch driver, because in order to get to the fairway, you got to get to at least 230 yards or whatever it was. It just, definitely not fun. Definitely not resort golf. But I wish we could go back in time and play it as fescue. I think maybe that would have changed things, but who's to say? I really love 16, as you mentioned. I will never forget that. That was definitely my favorite hole on that golf course. Some of the inland holes are fine. I know you got to get from the back right to the back left of the property, and the best way to do that is just put a few straightforward holes. I think was it 13 with the Barranca or 14 with the Barranca that you got to hit over. Not the wee par 3, but the hole before it. Those are some pretty cool holes. Yeah, but I think there's a lot more to offer around there, and we probably won't be back to Spanish Bay for a while. Definitely wanted to see it. Definitely, don't regret playing it.
Totally. No,
but
no. I mean, I'm a
else.
completionist in the sense of I'm a completionist in the sense of there's only 3, right? Like, I want to play all 3 of them. I at least want to say that I've done it. So I'm happy we played it, but yeah, and apologies to the Robert Trent Jones, firm, because I do think that place would play a lot better with fescue. But to your point, I think that when you feel when there's all of these sort of like island landing areas, you don't really. I mean, I don't play golf this way, but if you wanted to hit kind of a chippy 3-wood or something, you can't do that because it's going to hit the ice plant and eat your ball. And I don't know. I mean, I just had this memory of us on 17 and 17. Yeah. No. Yeah, 17. And I remember I hit it in the shit left. You hit it in the shit right. Paul hit it in the shit short. And I think Brian hit it in the shit short right. So we all had to drop a ball. We play that hole. We're on 18T. And I look back, and the group behind us, they're all looking for their balls in the shit too. So it's like that golf hole. I mean, it's like, I guess like maybe like, I would say that like that hole is probably averaging like less than 1 person per group, like not losing a ball on a hole. Like, again, to your point is you could make like, maybe we're not good enough, but I don't know. Like this isn't like,
how is that fun? It's not fun, especially as the 17th hole.
And then when you factor in the clientele, it just doesn't make any sense. But also too, I mean, I think it's worth noting there's some holes that like, and then the other hard part with Spanish Bay is there's some holes that like look amazing, but in actuality are like really stupid. Like number 7, like you played that hole like a fucking animal. It was so fun to watch you play that hole, but it's called, I think it was called Left Be Gone. And so basically the way this hole, the way this hole operates is like, if you want to just have like a easy tee shot, you need to hit it like 160 yards off the tee. It's a par 4. Because what happens is starting about 160, 170, 180, it starts to creep in on the left to the point, it really starts to cut in. And by the time you get up to where, of course, there's like a forced carry area that, to be clear, you can't hit it over. By the time you get to the tip of that at like 255, that fairway is probably like 15 yards wide. And then there's bunkers on the right side. So and then to be clear, if you were to hit a 7-iron off the tee, you would probably have to hit 3-wood or some kind of like long club to go for the green. Again, over a bunch of crap.
Totally.
Or you're hitting, I mean, honestly, if you want to just be like super, super smart, it might be like 8-iron pitching wedge. That's kind of, and the worst you're going to make is 5, where, I hit it in the fairway bunker. I decided to pitch out because the fairway bunker is so penal. I mean, I think, what did you do, Hussey? You hit driving iron, 5-iron?
2-iron, yeah.
Yeah.
2-iron, 5-iron.
And I can't emphasize,
those,
like, you're a 3 handicap, but like those 2 shots from a quality of strike contact was like a +3 the way you hit both of those shots, right? And you said the wind wasn't even blowing. Granted, we are playing from the back tees, but I'm still saying that that doesn't really matter to me that much. You're still asking someone, like, you're asking resort guests who really aren't thinking about golf course strategy to like hit a hybrid and then a long iron, or a hybrid and a hybrid with just crap everywhere. And again, when you're on the tee, it is a like provocative looking hole. Like, it like
Yeah.
looks so cool. There's all this like, it just looks cool. It's everything you want to see, where there's marsh and there's reeds and there's ice plant and there's white grass, or there's white grass. There's like that really white sand, and then like there's a tree that's kind of like making you think a little bit about going to the left, like, and then in the background's the Pacific Ocean. It's got all these components, but then you're like, holy shit, the way this golf course was, the way this hole was designed is so stupid, right? Because in my mind, if it's going to be left, be gone, then make it more generous on the right. Take out those bunkers, because even if someone hits it over on the right, you're still asking them to hit a 7-iron, 6-iron over a bunch of shit. Like, it's just, that's a good example of like, we could probably go through on every hole and remove at least one feature just to make the hole feel a little bit more playable. So that is my biggest thing.
That'd be a cool exercise, is to go through each hole at Spanish Bay and be like, what would you change here to make it better? I mean, like the first hole, it's like, just make it a little bit wider, because that green is so cool.
Yeah.
That green is sick. But going back to 7, you're right. Taking out those bunkers on the right.
There's no
the
need
issue
for
is
them.
I was in like prime position A, where it's middle of the fairway, far enough down where you kind of have a reasonable shot.
Yeah.
But I had to hit 5-iron. Like, what is a mid handicap having to do from that exact same spot? I mean, they're hitting, 2 hybrid, maybe 3 wood. I mean, that it's very penal, very, very hard, and that existed all over the place. Every single, every other hole had some sort of forced carry that just kind of made it a little difficult in your head.
Yeah. Well, even that stretch, that's 7. 8 was a cool hole. 8 is like, it's all marsh to the green, bunker front, bunker back, and then it's like road and Pacific Ocean on the right. But again, we're playing it back, but like, I think I hit a 6-iron in the middle of the green, and then you go to 9, and I did not do this to ice Hussey, but like, I looked at the yardage book. Shout out to Paul for getting us a yardage book, and it says MPCC is over on the right, so like everywhere over on the right is OB. So then you have a hole that's uphill, like bunkers aren't where you want to hit it, red stakes on the left, white hazard over on the right, and so then you like, so you're just kind of going through these stretches, and it's like, where do you get some relief, right? And then you go to 10, and it's like, Paul's wife's dad is a marshal, and he's like, oh, the actual line here is to aim it so far to the right, like a line that like you would even with the yardage book, you would never ever 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 think to aim that far to the right. So you don't know where to hit it on this hole, and so it's just kind of rinse and repeat. Where it's like, but again, there's some, like, I'm not gonna lie, like 8's a very hard par 3, but it was thrilling, right? It's like you're like, there's a bunch of tourists, there's the Pacific Ocean, here's a bunch of reeds. You need to grow up and hit a 6-iron into the middle of the screen, and it's gorgeous, right? And so I think that's the hard part, is that it's a very bipolar golf course. Where you're standing on 8 and you're like, this is sick. But then on 7, after I make like triple, I'm like, fuck this place, And then you're vibing, you make par, and then you make that long putt for par at 8, and you're like, cool. And then you fucking hit your, Michael Block over into the OB, and you're like, fuck this golf course, And so that's the hard part, is it's just like, you just kind of like, it's this back and forth around, like, you're like, okay, I kind of get it. Oh no, that's not good. Again, if you and I were maybe +3s, but again, I keep saying this, but the course isn't supposed to be for +3s. It is a resort golf course. So I don't know. I think that, again, if you're live in the Bay Area and you're a completionist, go play it with someone who's a Dukes Club member. But if you're coming from out of town, I don't know. And I think what was helpful is, I should have listened to this beforehand, or maybe I'm glad I waited. Garrett from the Fried Egg did a whole Monterey golf course breakdown, and he literally said to skip Spanish Bay. And I think that, like, if you're going to do it, like, especially with a Dukes Club member, I think Spyglass is like $50 more, and like, that is one that's Robert Trent Jones, but probably the better example, the little more fair example, the little more classic example. So I'd say just save the $50 somewhere else and go play Spyglass. We'll play there, and I'm really curious to play it after hearing what Garrett had to say. But I don't exactly know what kind of golfer you need to be like, you're gonna love Spanish Bay. I mean, some people, I guess, now that I think about it, like, do like, people go play the Ocean course and shoot 150 and are like into that. if you're a bit of a masochist, I think you're going to love Spanish Bay, but like, we're 2-3 handicaps who like just kind of more me than you, but I walked off and I was like I just watched someone die in front of me. I was like, what just happened? It's like, what?
Yeah. I need a Guinness, please. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was. And I mean, those par threes though, Robert Trent Jones Jr. might be one of the best par three architects out there.
Yeah.
I mean, what he did at Poppy Hills, I assume what he did at Spyglass are incredible. I know Poppy Hills is phenomenal, and that's he did that too. I can't wait to play Spanish because it sounds like it's a much better version of Poppy Hills with some
Spyglass. You already played Spanish.
Fuck. God.
That's the name of this pod. I can't wait. I played Spanish, and I can't wait to play it again.
Oh my gosh. I think that's enough. I don't think we need to talk about.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the real takeaway, especially right now, maybe they're having issues getting people on the tee sheet because like Pasatiempo, I love you. Stop emailing me about your rate. But if you're an NCGA member right now, you can go play the back nine at Pasatiempo twice for $195. That is how much we pay for Spanish Bay. For the love of God, go play the back nine at Pasatiempo twice. Like, if you're going to go spend $195 an hour to golf, please go play Pasatiempo and, just kind of wave goodbye to Spanish Bay.
They've got 2 pins on the greens, right?
They do. Yeah, I think that we should try. That ends October 31st. We should try to get down there and do that before that, and then just talk about that experience. I have a rule that every time we go to Pasatiempo, we're just going to record it and talk about it because it's worthy of that.
Yeah.
With NCGA, it's $195. Like, how can you beat that? That's probably better than the routing anyway, right? It's like, do you have to play the back nine twice?
I paid like $57 at Boundary Oak yesterday, man. Like, come on. I could play that 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or you can play Presidio. For you, it's like Presidio's about the same price.
$130.
I would say it's not, but for the sake of the argument,
it's pretty much the same. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What else is going on?
I guess the only thing is we're going up to Portland this weekend for a wedding. That'll be great. And I'm getting fit for a new driver with Big, so I'm really excited about that. At some point, we're going to have my coach, Kevin Pauly, on to talk, but basically, he's just helped me. Like, basically, the way my swing is, I'm trying to get a driver that sets up, much more open than my current setup. And so it's fun because I got fit for a driver July of 2020 when I, picked up golf, and, I've been playing golf like a crazy person for a couple months, and so much about my game is different and my swing is different after going to Kevin. And so I think for me, when I've been playing good golf, it's been really where my top and bottom of the bag has been really good. But due to my current setup, meaning my driver that I'm not fit for, it can be erratic. Like, when it's good, but it can also, like, you saw some of this last week, like, when everything's not sequenced perfectly, I can still hit the right ball, and because the driver is set up to go right. And then my putter is a bit temperamental just because, I used to putt with all my weight on my right foot, very, very forward press. And so my putter is set up to do that, and I've fundamentally changed. Shout out to JD. I'm a lot more neutral and athletic in how I putt, but I'm sort of fighting my putter, and so going to get fit for a new driver with Big, and then he's going to kind of help me, with Sam Putt Lab, kind of get my putter dialed in. Might sample the offerings of Lab Golf. We'll see. But really the middle of the bag, the irons and everything has been really, really good. The 3-wood's been great, but if I can get the driver to be a little bit more consistent, ball moving the way that I want it to, and then have a putter where overall it's good, but there's times where I'll miss a 3-footer because the way it is, like, the face will just shut on me because it's been like 5 degrees flat. So there's times where I just shut the face because I'm fighting the orientation of the putter. So I'm very excited to kind of get to kind of finish the bag, so to say, and also to see our guy Big. So that's what's up for me. What about you?
Well, I really hope you come back with a broomstick putter personally.
I don't think they'll let
Just-
me. I'm curious. I don't think they'll let
What do
me.
you mean they don't let? Come on.
Well, it has to.
What do
The
you mean
order
they
has.
won't let
The order
you?
has to go through them, and I don't think they're going to allow that. Jack has said no. Big has said no.
Um.
So they can't
Well,
look
we
like
can figure
Adam
that
Scott. I
out.
at least want to have his putter. You know.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, for me, I'm just trying to play as much golf as I can before and spend time with my wife, of course. Before I head off for harvest, starting
which is when?
mid-September till
Mid-September.
mid-October. Yeah, so I'll be down in the beautiful spaceport town of Lompoc, where Vandenberg Space Force Base is, and
La Parissima.
yeah, I'm gonna try and get at the La Parissima when I can when I'm down there, and
Yeah.
play in the wind a bit more and get my teeth kicked in. But I'd highly recommend maybe investing in some property in Lompoc in about 100 years because of the Space Force Base. It's going to be a spaceport, and so
Holy cow.
just property values are just going to skyrocket. Just FYI, I don't have a vision fund, but if I did, it would be snapping up properties in Lompoc for sure.
I mean, many people are
cents.
saying, many people
are saying. No, God. No. Well,
Yeah.
Ashton, I
No,
think
it's good
that's
to know.
enough for.
Yes. No. We'll wrap this up on that very distasteful hand gestures from me, denoting many fine people on both sides. Chris Hussey, thank you so much.
No.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really fun to play a bunch of good golf with you recently, and just keep doing your thing, man. It's fun to watch you ball out.
Thank you very much, Ashton. I appreciate your
course.
kind words, and I hope I get to play with you. Maybe this week, if not, maybe next week. We'll
make it
during
happen.
A weekday twilight round.
Yeah. And if my employer's listening, these are after 5 p.m. To be clear, these are
Of
not
course,
happening.
yeah. Twilight
Like
is
5,
late.
5:30, 5:45 after I've knocked everything out. To be clear, that's what we're talking about. Here.
I don't get off work until 4:30, so I can't play golf until after then.
Yeah.
Technically,
Beautiful. Yeah. Allegedly, that's for us.
technically.
Yeah.
All right.
Also, I guess the last thing we should say, just before we get out of here, we took all of our partners to the Hay and had an 18-hole putting contest, and that was Spanish Bay was great, but that was the highlight of the whole trip. It came down to I think one stroke, and it's just a call out to we're getting excited because the Golden Gate 9 is going to be wrapped up in the fall, and I think that's going to be amazing for Liz, because the big thing for us is the closest par 3 that we can actually go to is Carica, and the traffic and the bridge, but I think that's actually a place where we can regularly get out, and hopefully Liz can meet some other female golfers, and but just that experience was reminding that Big Chris, as I said, you teach from the green to the tee, and we put putters in their hands and they're all kind of looking at us like, what, but it's so crazy that by the end they're comfortable and excited, and Elizabeth made a hole-in-one and did the fill jump, and it was just really amazing, where it's I wish that every community could have a free putting green, charge us through the teeth for the beer or whatever, but man, if we could have more places like that, people would just fall in love with the game in a much more authentic and real way, and even if all they ever do is putt, it just would do so much for our game. So I know that Akbar, our good friend, who owns Seamus Golf, I know Akbar has been trying for years to get a putting green in Portland, and it's something I'd love to see. I guess we can call that kind of similar to what they're doing with Golden Gate 9, but it's just a shout out to, or call out to, any kind of local communities that if you just give a shaper a bulldozer and build a crazy green and charge people $8 for a beer, it'd make all of our communities a lot better.
Yep, I completely agree.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Have a great night, my man, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right.
Peace.
Thanks.